for the update. And Jamil Jaffer is with us now, founder of the National Security Institute. He also once served as in the U.S. Justice Department. Thank you so much for being here. I first wanted to get your reaction to these new sanctions Joe outlined, just announced this morning. Was the severity what you had expected? Do they go far enough?
Well, Kelly, look, it's a good first step. President Biden had promised a devastating blow to Russia if Alexei Navalny died in prison. He did die in prison. This is a good first step, but let's be realistic. Russia has evaded U.S. sanctions now for 2 years. They managed to work with China and other nations to sell, India included, to sell their oil and the like, Iran and the like. And so a lot of these nations have significant sanctions and pressure already on them. It's hard for us to break that apart. Economic sanctions are simply not going to do the job alone. We've got to impose one secondary sanction on other nations that are involved as well. And then on top of that, you've really got to go after what's happening in Ukraine. You've really got to fund that war completely. Even the Biden aid package today, Kelly, if it were funded by Congress, which is a problem today, is not enough to let Ukraine win this war. And that's what we should be talking about at the end of the day, is how do we really push back on Russia and really make them feel the pain. None of this will actually do that in the long run. And that's the fundamental flaw in the current strategy, I think.
So I want to talk about the impact from other countries as well. They've been weighing in. They've been issuing their own sanctions and the like. However, first, in terms of, well, let's start here. Denmark announced a nearly $250 million military aid package for Ukraine. Is there more the global community can do to help the U.S. With these efforts to stop Russia from this full-scale invasion?
Yeah, Kelly, one of the things we can do that's most important is get our allies to come with us and take on more of the burden. At the same time, it's going to require the kind of U.S. weaponry that allows Ukraine to reach into Russia, go behind their supply lines, and take out those capabilities. We've been unwilling to provide those to date in this long war that's killed thousands of civilians because we're afraid that Russia will respond and get more aggressive. The reality is Russia's already escalating. They're working with Iran. They're working with China. This is not just about Ukraine, and the American people need to understand that. The president needs to go out there and explain it. He should be on a campaign out there trying to convince voters, trying to convince the American public, trying to convince Congress to fund this fight and to fund it to win, not just to fight to stalemate. That's the problem, and our allies need to come along with that also. Today, everyone's sort of happy with sort of funding Ukraine at a minimum level so this fight continues for years. That's not a way of successfully prosecuting this effort. It's why you see Republicans frustrated with the situation and pushing back on aid. It's not that they're opposed to Ukraine. It's they don't see a path to winning here.
What do you believe the U.S. needs to do right now to stop Russia potentially in their tracks, Jamil?
I think if we were to triple the number of M1 Abrams that are in the fights as main battle tanks, we would really put F-16s in the fight today. And, at some level, provide them the long-range weapons that can hit into Russia behind their supply lines, take out those capabilities that Russia's trying to rebuild right now. That would give Ukraine the fundamental edge, allow them to push back, get Russia out of eastern Ukraine, and potentially even go after Crimea, which Russia took without any real response from the U.S. back in 2014, 2015.
So there are also reports that Moscow could once again try to seize the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. Do you see that happening? And either way, what do you believe is the next phase of this war?
Well, right now, the war is, they're moving back and forth. The Russians are making small gains here and there. Ukraine pushes back every once in a while. Right, a march to Kyiv, I think, is unlikely right now. But if we allow this sort of moderate version of a stalemate to continue, Russia will be able to rebuild its capabilities. Ukraine is not prepared today to do the kind of call up 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 fighters it needs to do that. And so if they're going to win this war, it's going to be on the backs of technology provided by the Americans. By the way, Kelly, it's worth noting that's money not being spent in Ukraine, but money being spent here in the United States on American workers, American weapons. So the idea that the administration and Congress can't figure out a way to make this happen and find a way for Ukraine to win, push back on Russia, push back on its alliance with China and Iran, that's what this is about. It's about a larger global effort, not just Russia and not just Ukraine.
All right, Jamil Jaffer, we always appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
And I'd like to welcome now Robert Sherman to talk more.